Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. It's a 3-day weekend,
Yep.
so you know that's I got that going for
so,
me, which
so,
is
so we
nice.
got that going for us. Yeah, cool.
Uh, uh, yeah, no, it's I haven't slept in like more than 24 hours.
Stop
Just
doing that.
I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't want to. I didn't want this to happen, but it happened again.
All right.
And it's at that point now that I'm afraid if I go to sleep, I'm just gonna miss like all day today and all day tomorrow, just as like to compensate it, like to pay that off. And it's like I didn't want this.
It's
I
I
didn't ask for this. I
I,
didn't ask for this life. This life chose me.
I had one of those a couple weeks back. I completely slept through like a staff meeting for work, like a Zoom call. I just like it. The meeting was at 9, like 9 to 10, and I woke up at 10 a.m. on the dot, and like looked at my phone and was just like, shit. So I immediately am like texting my boss saying like, I'm so sorry. I just completely slept through all four of my alarms or whatever it was. Yeah, and but it was like it was one of those things where I've had that a few times where I've been like, I'll get to that point in the night, like 3 in the morning or something like that, where I'm like, all right, I don't want to risk going to sleep and then sleeping through something important in the morning. So maybe I'll just stay up through that and then like take a mini nap and then like wake up and do like the rest of the work or something like that. Um, but yeah, I can appreciate that. Um, but before we dive into the show, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast everywhere you can, please. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like all of our wonderful Patreon producers and all that stuff do. No new patrons this week, but if you do join us over on Patreon, we'll give you a little shout out here on the podcast. Just as a little thank you. And yeah, so let's dive in. We've got kind of a big major topic of the show. This is going to be, and this episode is probably already titled, our Karate Kid and Cobra Kai Spoilercast episode, because I basically spent the week binging all of that. But before we dive into that, Cameron, you've been playing Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, so tell me a little bit about that.
I had my trepidations walking into it because I haven't played a Musou game since the PlayStation 2.
Okay.
Um, like Dynasty Warriors. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say Dynasty Warriors 4, maybe 5. I don't know. At some point, like I lost track because before they were like, we're gonna do this cool thing where we're gonna be telling stories, and now I just don't know where things are at,
Mm-hmm.
and it's too confusing for me to like want to hop back in when there's like 50 characters to choose from or whatever. And it's like I don't remember like almost any of these, like some of these extremely minor characters from like Chinese literature that I've read. I don't recognize any of this. I'm so confused. Um, which is like the core tenet of kind of like how I was like my biggest worry about going into like I haven't played Musou games in such a long time. I don't know what the mechanics are like anymore. How is he even going to play? I heard like or the original Hyrule Warriors was fine for Musou game, but even then was kind of lackluster.
Mm-hmm.
Fire Emblem, the Fire Emblem one was considered a bit more of a like a bit had more depth to it than Hyrule Warriors, and Hyrule Warriors a lot of people felt was kind of like phoned in.
Okay.
So Age of Calamity, I was like, but people have been really talking up about it. I wonder if it was going to be any good. And I decided, oh sorry, my hair's all over the place today. Um, I decided that I would kind of take a leap because I haven't been playing anything on my PlayStation 4. Um, I'm still in the throes of like I'm on the precipice of finally getting the last part I need to repair my PC. So like that long,
The
almost year-long odyssey
the
will
never-ending
be
saga.
completed. Yeah, the never-ending saga that is like my PC woes since last May.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. When I finally can boot that baby on, I'm just gonna cry. I'm just gonna sit there and cry for a good like 35 minutes maybe. Um, But yeah, no, like I haven't been playing anything on my consoles, just because between work and everything else, like this week was really tough on my training. I'm wrapping it up for work, and so not a lot of not a lot of like cognitive breathing time. So I've just been like replaying a lot of Hades, and then you know picked up Age of Calamity because it's like why not? And I have been so pleasantly surprised by it. It has been a really tremendous amount of fun. Uh, the idea of how do you make Link more of a diverse character with his like all the champions are awesome. They play super uniquely according to like what their specialties are.
Mhm. So for those that don't know, the game is basically
Yeah.
a prequel. It takes place 100 years before Breath of the Wild in that kind of like war against Ganon with the champions that you meet in Breath of the Wild, but it's them kind of in their prime, right?
No.
No. Okay.
This is possibly in like this is I'm gonna let you guys know full spoilers here. Because it's not really that much of a spoiler because it literally happens in the first like 3 minutes of the game when you start it up in that opening sequence. Uh, this is an alternate timeline.
Okay. Sure. I feel like whatever. Like every Zelda game is quote unquote an alternate timeline, like all that
But
bullshit.
I mean actually alternate like so there's a like this white egg shaped guardian that was in like a box in Zelda's like laboratory
Okay.
that fell down and activated and somehow there's like a time portal. Anyway, the point being is that
if
this
if if
this guardian
if you
has
had talked about
shifted
this
things.
game as if it was just a prequel, like everybody else that talks about this game has, would it have changed at all how you're actually talking about the game?
Yes,
I disagree.
because Trevor, I'm one of 6 people maybe who really actually loved the story that was told in Breath of the Wild and wanted more of that story or more of that explored.
Sure,
Champion
the
DLC definitely gave me some of that.
the 14 different scenes you could kind of discover across the game. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I know your feelings about
Glad you
Breath of the
enjoyed.
Wild.
But
I know. And
the point being, like, those are the characters you're dealing with, right?
yes,
Is the
that's correct.
champions back 100 years ago, even if it's
Right.
like
It's different this time around,
alternate
yeah.
timeline, whatever.
That's
Okay,
it's very much a it's not gonna like it may not end the way that it ended before because things are different now. Um,
sure.
like it's a bit interesting because the dynamics between like Link and the other champions is just like a little bit different to a lot different. Like Mifa's is like the Zora princesses isn't that much different because they had like a pre set up backstory beforehand, but like like relationship with Grook is a little bit different, and then it's very different with I'm about to call him Rialto even though that's not his name. Bird Boy.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Because in this version, Link's not traveling with Zelda after he's been named the hero to seal the dark, like the hero who will seal the darkness. He's just a knight in this one. And so it's like there's different things that are going on here, and things are different enough this time around to maybe make a difference in the end. And that's kind of like what it's going for as the plot goes. But because of that, you have moments where you play as the other champions, and because it like the timeline for Breath of the Wild, even though like it was like they played real loose with it, how they told the story, did have kind of like a compressed like sequence of events that just is not happening this time around. And so it's cool to explore this different way, like this in a different way. But what's really awesome is the way that they're using Link as a character because Link can still use the different weapon types that he was able to use in Breath of the Wild. So the implementation of great swords and spears, and because he's not the hero who seals the darkness just yet, he doesn't have the Master Sword. So he is just kind of this all-around knight who has these different weapons, and they each play differently mechanically, as well as like not just in their attacks, but also in your combos and specialties. But like the great sword has a mechanic where you actually, to get a powered up move, it eats away at your life. And so, and they're like, there's a like a small window of recovery to get back some of that, most of that life. But there's a lot of risk and reward with that. The spear has a lot of charge-based mechanics, and then the sword and shield has a lot of like a lot of maneuverability based stuff. Like the shield surfing is like a passive running like intro into a fight move that is just like it's a launching move where you launch into a crowd and you can keep doing that until you stop to actually get into your combos. And so there's a lot of ways that like the sword and shield can be abused, um, intentionally so, because it's the like, and then the sword and shield has access to the bow. The other ones don't, and so it's played very differently. Now you'd think that okay, well, you know, Zora Princess Mifa, she has the spear, so she'll use the spear like Link does. No, totally different. She has a mechanic where she like will like shoot like summon a geyser and then she can like teleport herself into that geyser for a dive attack. Grook is all based on this like momentum based attacking with his giant sword and where he can summon magma and make it blow up. Um, Bird Boy's one of the most OP because he actually has like he can permafly. Like you can just be in the air away from enemies and you can just like if they're low enough level, you can just like annihilate waves of enemies. He has a harder time with like single enemies that are at his level or higher though, so that's cool. And then the I don't want to call her. Sorry, both lack of sleep and also just because I don't listen to the audio in English. I listen to it in Japanese. So like the name's Urbosa is I just barely unlocked her. She
Mm-hmm.
has a charge based mechanic where she uses her sword and shield as well as like lightning charges on it to do different kind of attacks. It's super cool. Zelda is awesome, and although I think she's one of the like for me she's one of the harder characters to use, just because it requires you to rotate around cooldowns with the Sheikah Slate. And then Impa was a character that I didn't realize was going to even be in the game, and she's awesome. She is like a full on like she plays the way the evil ninjas in Breath of the Wild play, like ran around and did stuff with.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like you get to play as that, and so she's super cool. She uses like ninja techniques to like make like light clones of herself, like the like or rather not light clones. She summons the ancestors, so the blue ancestors in the shrines are like summoned and like help attack like in synchronization with her. So that's really cool. Like battle wise, it's really cool. There's a lot of like side stuff going on where the items that you unlock in the battlefields can help you, whether you buy stuff from shops or whatnot that you have to unlock through missions on kind of like a war map. And you're making progress to kind of like improve things. Uh, and you have like a central tower that like that's one of the things that changes in this timeline is that the little miniature white egg guardian uh, summons a giant map tower, like right in front of Hyrule Castle. And so from there, Link and Zelda and their crew kind of like plan out how they're going to do things and like, oh, that's our next battlefield. We'll like glide to it, like use the glider to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's really cool. It's fun. It is telling a very fun like the the story of Breath of the Wild has such a sad note to it because there's a tragedy to it. The champions are dead. They're your friends and they're dead. Um,
I mean, like everybody that you dealt with is dead
yeah,
because, and that was like, yes, I give the game's like plot and story a lot of crap, and that's really like probably my biggest issue with it is just like that is such a
all the people you care about are
self-inflicted
dead.
wound that like didn't need to you didn't need to set the game 100 years after it because it makes Ganon like seem like not a huge threat if he hasn't been able to really make too much progress in 100 years. Like he killed you 100 years ago or whatever, and you're not killed you, but like he put you out of commission 100 years ago, and Zelda has been able to stave off the darkness that long. But yeah, then like everybody else is dead, so you only interact with them through memories and the magic of the champion and
Yeah,
what
and the sacred
the
beasts.
guardians or whatever. Yeah. And yeah, so it's like, why make it 30 years, make it 50 years, something like that, so there would still be like make it
Yeah, no, I mean, what you mean.
I didn't have this reference point at the time, but I did like highlight the first episode I watched of Airbender: Last Avatar. It's like the same kind of thing for Aang. It's like setting it 100 years, or he's been frozen in the ice for so long. It's like, well, nobody he knows is really still around, and sure enough, over the course of the series, like two characters are maybe that he knew from his childhood still exist in that world. So yeah, it was like, just make it a shorter time span window so that you can have like these flashbacks of like, Link fighting alongside people and then him running into their old versions of those characters or whatever. But whatever. Rivale was
Rivali, thank you.
the bird guy,
Bird boy. Yeah.
the Rito. Was the
Yep.
Rito like, was this an introduction to the Ritos, or have they been in other Zelda games and I just don't remember them?
If I recall correctly, Rito were in Skyward Sword. Were they introduced?
That sounds right. Because that admittedly,
They were. Yeah. No,
the
not Skyward Sword.
Wikipedia says they actually made their debut in
Oh,
the Wind
oh,
Waker.
in Wind Waker. That's right. Wind
I
Waker.
did not remember
They're a
them
Wind
from
Waker race,
Yeah, I did not remember
and
them from Wind Waker.
they got pulled over from Wind Waker into because instead of doing Rito in Wind Waker, they evolved into the Orokoko in the like Twilight Princess timeline. Anyway, different bird people basically.
Gotcha.
They either become furry bird people or they become creepy alien looking bird people. Either way, it's a win-win.
Sure. If you got a thing for bird people.
Hey, they give you variety. That's Legend of Zelda's promise.
I
No,
mean,
but like
I mean,
yeah,
technically, Garrus, I guess, is supposed to be a bird person, so that's cool.
like a raptor bird man. Yeah. Um. Yeah. No, I'm really enjoying it. It's telling a fun story. The gameplay is fun. It's great because you don't have to be like, oh, I select to use this character as I'm going into this level, and then I have to play that character the entire time. There's actually multiple people that you go into the battle with. You bring in Link and then a champion of your choice, and then the two of you have like the standard support characters for that level. And then but you can order people around on the map. So it's like, okay, I don't want to run all the way over to this because I also have to do something over here. So I'm going to tell Garuk, go over there, while as I'm Link, I'll run over here. He'll get down there. So by the time I'm done taking care of this, like this obstacle over here, this objective over here, I can swap over to Garuk, be Garuk, and then take care of the objective over there. And then if I need to, swap back to Link. And has been super cool. When you unlock Urbosa, there's this awesome moment where like I sent Urbosa and Grook to like very specifically do these things over there so that I could be Link and take on the giant sandfish or the giant sand shark. And so this alternative side objective I was able to take down as Link, immediately shoot over to Urbosa and Grook, take out the actual objective things, and then everybody met up to take on the boss for the level. It was super cool, super enjoyable. I'm barely like getting into the surface of this game. I'm deeply, deeply into it. It's so much fun. Getting to play, like finally being able to play through the like pre-Calamity Breath of the Wild world that like we were teased very like we were very badly teased of in Breath of the Wild. You and I both had that complaint. Like instead of just cutscenes, they should have done something to separate the timeline, or like you could play through that world that was populated. And it's cool doing that. It's cool like unlocking like different merchants and stuff to or separate missions to upgrade your health or combo count, like how many combos you have. There are specific missions where you need resources, and instead of having to play through a dumb side mission that really would be boring, they don't make you do that. Instead, it unlocks it, and you get it, and then you're good to go. So they've done a lot to like streamline the process and make it just really enjoyable. Overall, like I don't think like if I had played this last year, it would have broken my top 10. Um, I might have made it break the top 10 just to spite The Last of Us Part 2. I'm joking. I wouldn't have done that. Um, yeah, no, I really am enjoying it. It's a great game to play while I'm listening to podcasts or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And the cutscenes and the story is fun and interesting. And instead of it being like I'm gonna have to prepare myself for being sad, because the calamity is gonna happen no matter what, it might be different this time, and it might not be. They might still fail,
Yeah.
and that's okay. Because it's giving me it's giving these characters a chance to have a different outcome, and that in itself is engaging and fun because they have no idea like what the other opportunity was. Like it's cool seeing Link just being like a knight that's assigned to guard Zelda,
Mm-hmm.
and not he is the man who wields the sword that will seal the darkness. Like he's not quote unquote like the special Link yet.
Yeah,
He's not
he's
known
not
for
the
that.
guy. Yeah.
Like the game starts where you're just part of a royal guard, like the Hyrulean art, like a Hyrulean grunt. Like you start the game off as that. It's you and a bunch of other Hyrulean grunts in the field trying to take on moblins, and it's cool. And like you're having to like reinforce captains and stuff. And at the very end of that level, like the king goes, "There's something different about that guy." And instead of it being like you're being summoned, come do this, it gets upended, and so that doesn't happen that way. And it's just neat, and I like it. And Impa's cool, Zelda's fun, because this is definitely post like this is post her being told you're supposed to be the person who can seal darkness by her dad. That cutscene from Breath of the Wild where he says your science is garbage, use magic. Like why can't you use magic? Why are you giving me science instead? Um, like this is definitely post that, but pre like the very long, lengthy scientific journey that she and Link went on. It's different this time, and it's cool.
All right.
I like it. I'm super digging it.
Nice. I'm glad you're
Oh, and
enjoying
no
it.
breakable weapons. No breakable weapons, Trevor.
That is probably the best selling point for that game you've given uh, over the course of the last 20 minutes. um, yeah, it's like I've heard people like Britt Brombacher from What's Good talk about the game, and she seems to be really excited about the prospect of like the potential implications that the game has for the proper Breath of the Wild sequel. Are you kind of getting the same kind of vibes of like, oh, maybe Breath of the Wild 2 will be more of a spin-off of this adventure, or maybe there are things in this adventure that are being foreshadowed in that are potentially foreshadowing Breath of the Wild 2?
So I'm early enough where that could definitely go that way. I didn't even think about that. Like there's a mysterious enemy that was debuted in a cutscene that is not in the original Breath of the Wild game, and this might be like his introduction to Breath of the Wild 2, maybe, or he's just the enemy of this game. Like it could go either way. It's really for early into it, but now that you say that, there's enough interesting things kind of in the background going on that could definitely lead up to something like that.
Yeah.
But I think I'm still too early to be able to like. She's definitely saying like she's been playing it way more than I have since I started it 2 days ago,
Mm-hmm.
or technically a day ago. Sorry, I haven't slept yet, so.
I mean, it still
Uh,
still would be 2 days ago, Cam. Like the day did not just become 48 hours because you haven't slept.
it's I got it more than 24 hours ago, less than 48 hours ago. There we go.
Okay. Well, that's Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity. Thank you for sharing your impressions on that. I guess we'll hear more about it as you continue playing through it. So yeah, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I guess last week while we were live recording our big old 5 hour game of the year epic, it came up again just throughout there. You were gonna make a Karate Kid reference, and then you like backed off because I hadn't watched Karate Kid. So we talked about it a little bit then. Basically, like that night, I think as I went to start like editing the podcast together for like the podcast services and all that stuff, I threw on Karate Kid, the first one, and watched through that. And then basically like the rest of the week, I watched Karate Kid Part 2 and Part 3. I didn't bother going into the next Karate Kid because I know
You don't need to.
Hilary Swank kind of goes off in and Ralph Macchio's not even in that one, right? So
Nope, he's not.
so yeah, I knew that like it was basically like that was the core trilogy that was going to be important for Cobra Kai. And then I went through and binged the first 3 seasons of or all 3 seasons of Cobra Kai. So it was a very Karate Kid filled week for me. And just I guess up front here, we'll probably be diving into Karate Kid spoilers and stuff. So if you haven't watched and you care, go ahead and check them out. I watched because I didn't realize like one of the reasons I hadn't watched Karate Kid, like a month ago when like Kind of Funny was doing in review on it, was I didn't know that it was available anywhere because I had checked like some of the apps and just didn't see it anywhere. But Zyger mentioned in our stream that it was available on Amazon. So Amazon Prime, it was Amazon Prime with ads, which I'm like, I always get annoyed when I'm like, I'm paying for the service. Why are you also giving me ads on top of that? Whatever. So I watched the movies through Amazon, and then obviously Cobra Kai is all on Netflix now. I definitely enjoy Cobra Kai way more than the movies, but obviously I wouldn't appreciate Cobra Kai as much as I do without knowing the references it's making and the callbacks it's making to the movies. Just kind of as a broad overview, I would say like the first movie is fine. It feels really long, especially by like today's movie making standards. Like there's just a lot of like very low action, low kind of anything happening scenes in that movie. That you
very low energy atmosphere.
Yeah. And then like knowing nothing about the series, going into it, like when film 2 goes and says, okay, we're going to completely leave all this stuff behind and we're going to go to Japan for the movie. I was like, that's a different take. Okay. Sure. I didn't like, I think I would much more appreciate that approach now if they were to do it now, as they kind of touch on in Cobra Kai a little bit, because doing it in the 80s, they had to come up with this justification for everybody to be speaking English to one another.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, but like when Miyagi and Yukie are like, alone together, reconfessing their love after years and years apart or whatever, like there's no real reason for them to be speaking it in like broken English together.
Nope.
I was like,
nope,
that makes no sense at all. So just like put that in like Japanese and have it, subtitled for American audiences or whatever. And yeah, it was just like it was it was not the departure I was expecting. Especially like for the era of the 80s. I've also been watching the Kind of Funny interview stuff, and they touch on it a little bit in kind of that saga. But it's like, and I was thinking about it like last night. It would be like if in Back to the Future 2, instead of going to the future, like Doc Brown got them in the car and was like, "We're going to feudal Japan," just for no reason. But then at the same time, I started thinking about how much I watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 growing up.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which also goes to Japan after for no real reason in the saga and the timeline of things. So, it was maybe that was just the thing to do in the 80s, early 90s. And then
there was a real rise of like big interest in like, so and this is actually a really interesting thing that happened in the 80s, and it's actually tied into partially we like brought up when we talked about cyberpunk, we talked about why like there's this weird homogenization of Chinese and Japanese as like the Asian representation in cyberpunk genre.
Mm-hmm.
And it's and it's the same thing here. There's a rise in Japanese representation in the 80s, and the reason for that is in the 80s Japan became an economic powerhouse.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's when they started selling us all the electronics.
Yeah, when Japan became the economic superpower that it became. Uh, One, it didn't have to worry about supply like funding a military because it was under the protection of the United States. So instead of having like a military budget like every other country in the world, they were able to divert it completely into, um, you know, grant programs, all other sorts of stuff to stimulate their economy. And the boom that they received towards the end of the 60s going into the like mid 90s was a like economic phenomenon of like this like quasi rural country that had like that was industrial in a lot of ways, but it was industrial in a lot of ways that most countries were, to completely restructuring themselves and turning themselves into this economic, tour de force that really took the world by storm. So Japan all of a sudden became something of a lot more interest and impact in the 80s and not like early like late 80s early 90s. And Karate Kid is no exception. The martial art that Miyagi-Do is based off of is Okinawan Hakusuru, which is a like if it's interesting because the move, the crane kick, is very famous because of it's used in this film,
Mm-hmm.
or it's used in the first film. The crane kick is actually a maneuver you use against three people at once. You the wings of the crane are meant to go into this like the like upper rib cage, lower chest area of people onto your side, and then the kick is supposed to do the trick kick to the person in front of you, but it's meant to be like an instantaneous thing. You don't sit there with it. But when Hakusuru was being put on display, they weren't using it against people, and so people were going through the forums. And so when like the people who were behind the film saw somebody go through the form for Hakusuru with the crane kick, they're like, "Oh, we'll use it here for this." And it's like it's interesting to see kind of like how that's used, how that's evolved. Okinawa, of course, is a very early like Okinawa is the first colony of Japan, if that makes any sense. Okinawan culture and even people, down to like genetic stuff, are are quite different than regular Japanese people, um, just physically. And
Mm.
so Okinawa, like Miyagi's from Okinawa. There's like the story of like the origins of Miyagi-Do karate being based off of Chinese kenpo. Like there's all sorts of really cool stuff that they ended up doing here, but it's all fabricated. It's all made up.
Yeah, of course.
Um, and it's fine because here's the thing: for an '80s film, weirdly progressive.
Yeah, that's. I mean, like that was definitely something I thought about, kind of as I was watching through. I was like there are definitely some things that are probably like too uber stereotypical for the time or whatever. But the fact that like it was that you do have such a non-white cast of characters in this, like, and then obviously like they do have kind of like, oh, there's an army base right by, so it does explain why there are still a lot of white people around this town and why everybody's
Well,
speaking English and all that stuff. But yeah, it was like,
like the
yeah, pretty much like
yeah,
Ralph Macchio is really the only central figure of that movie that is kind of your
that's
Western audience kind of character. Talking about
yeah.
just a slight diversion, since we were talking about kind of the 80s being the rise of like Japan as kind of a economic powerhouse. I was like, what did I watch recently that even really touched on that? And I was like, oh, of course, it was the annual Christmas watching of Die Hard. So I pulled up the Die Hard
Hmm.
quote where Joseph Takagi talks about, "Hey, we're flexible. Pearl Harbor didn't work, so we got you with tape decks." And yeah, it was I mean, like, yeah. Also,
That's great.
of course, iconic 80s film there.
Yeah.
With
Oh, but we also
Nakatomi Plaza
saw.
being a huge, Japanese influence
Oh
kind
yeah.
of on the thing. But yeah,
Oh no, but I wanted to say that on the flip side, you look at Wonder Woman 1984, and I made a comment. I'm like, now Wonder Woman 1984 literally took all the worst stereotypes from 80s films
hmm
and like brought them forward.
yeah,
And you look back at a film like Karate Kid Part 2, and it's like, are there problems there? Majorly. But it's also a story that is central to like Daniel San is not the um, is not he is like Ralph Macchio is the star of the film, but he is not the emotional heart of that story.
Right.
The emotional heart of that story is Miyagi himself and his like the very complicated relationships that he left behind. And
in two, yes, absolutely. I mean, like, part two very much strikes me as, well, Pat Morita got nominated for an Oscar, so let's like really try and dive into his story and make another, showcase for him as a performer, as opposed to like, and of course we got to bring Ralph Macchio along for the ride. Was basically how part two feels. It feels like, like when. Like when West Wing and Allison Janney kind of like was a breakout star of the West Wing, and so you started seeing a lot more CJ focused episodes on West Wing or something like that to really kind of highlight and showcase her character, that kind of thing, because the natural trajectory you would see is he won the All Valley. Okay, now let's go to like the All State tournament next, and then let's go to nationals in the third movie or something like that. It would be kind of the Glee trajectory of like regionals. Okay, now All State, and then now nationals or whatever.
Also known as the sports anime.
Exactly.
Arc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like just sports arcs in general, I would say. Because
in general, yes.
like you have the Mighty Ducks being another, example of like, they won. Now they're, the all U.S. team and they're going to the Olympics. Cool. Sure. Why not? So when they, even in part 3, when they just kind of like revisit All Valley again, but like with a twist, I guess, it was still like, okay, sure. Like
where it's like they remind you, they're like, whoa, it's crazy, he went to Japan and got into a fight to the death. It's like,
yeah.
And then he came back to America and was put into multiple situations that were kind of worse.
Exactly. Like, yeah, the fight to the death with Chosen is like nothing compared to guys like constantly terrorizing your shop that you own, and when you're like mountain climbing and they threaten to kill you like multiple times unless you sign a paper to fight them in a tournament. It's like,
that's the plot. Like, that's the thing.
What?
You have to sign this paper, Daniel. You have to sign this paper.
And they just go complete full tilt into just pure evil. Like, John Kreese is like a dick in the first movie, and then he's like, he's a little bit more of a dick in the second movie, in that they, introduce him like choking out Johnny and
almost murdering Johnny Lawrence for coming in second place. Yes.
Yeah.
And then trying to murder Miyagi.
Yeah. And then in 3 and now continuing on into Cobra Kai, like he is just such an over the top evil cartoon villain that is just like, I can't wait to see you get your comeuppance, because that's clearly what this is all building towards.
Yeah.
And admittedly, 3 seasons into Cobra Kai, I wish he was like had been taken down a peg more, instead of like still getting the one up on our heroes, so to speak.
But that's why it's good though, and they like, I have to say, John Kreese as a villain, like as this overarching like dark presence throughout Cobra Kai season 2 and 3 is so good. But what I loved was like, a lot of people ask the question, why did nobody call the cops?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's going on here? Why has nobody said anything? And then in Cobra Kai season 3, it shows he's just so good at the PR game.
Yeah.
That he's a Vietnam veteran, former Green Beret.
Yeah.
Like, pillar of the community. Like, just like, and it's like, it shows outside, if you're not his enemy, like if you're not his enemy, in his eyes, you're just like, he's going to treat you with like, just totally fine.
Or he's just not going to treat you like anything at all. Like he clearly has disdain for all the people he's duping. But he's gonna use them to his advantage.
I mean, he's a sociopath, so yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing is, like, his story could have easily been done especially when they go off to Japan in part 2, like you could have just never had him come. Like the last thing we ever saw with him could have been him punching through the windows, and failing to Miyagi. The fact that like part 3 ends up being like him like completely falling to the wayside, faking his own death or whatever, or at least Terry Silver fakes his death kind of thing. And that was one of the things, like when they talk about him being dead in season 1 of Cobra Kai, I was like, is he really dead though? And so like him coming back at the tail end of in the last season of season 1, I was like, I knew he wasn't really dead.
Well, it's great because did you like you watch that scene where Daniel is just like,
like
he's like John Kreese is dead.
Yeah, I've heard that
whatever.
before. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah.
Everybody else is like, oh, he's dead, and he's like, I don't believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because it happened to me before. That's how you Cobra Kai's got me before.
Yeah, and I mean, like in this day and age, that would be so easy to check. You can just be like, John Kreese obituary. I don't see anything, so I don't think he's really dead, guys. But yeah, so yeah, the movies all kind of for me are all way too long, and like there's like I enjoy them fine enough. Like 3 just becomes such an over the top cartoon that I'm just like, okay, sure. My biggest issue with all of them, I think, I don't remember, I think we've touched about this a little bit off air kind of thing, was that none of them, actually I guess I was probably talking with Logan about this. None of them like have a very satisfying ending because none of them have like a denouement. They all end with like Daniel winning the fight and then freeze frame. And it's like, it's, never more than like 30 seconds between like the end of the thing and the freeze frame going into credits. So especially when the third movie comes around, like I wanted to see all of the villains get their comeuppance, and Daniel just beating them in a tournament is not that. Like I don't get to see Terry Silver having to pay for his toxic waste terribleness, and I don't get to see the kid that has been terrorizing them to win this tournament. Like, yeah, I know he doesn't now get his 50% of the dojos or whatever, but like, fuck that guy. He tried to murder these kids multiple times.
Yeah.
And you just don't get to see that. And so Cobra Kai.
That's accurate.
Cobra Kai at least gives us more of that kind of stuff because of the nature of that series. So I get to like sit with the consequences of these things longer. So that's one of the reasons I think I'm really appreciating the show that much more. And I'm also a fan of the, like I'm a huge fan of the Wicked type of story that is like, well, let's look at the thing from the other person's perspective. Let's like the bad guy's perspective. And Johnny Lawrence is still very much a bad guy when this show kicks off. He's clearly like living in the past, obviously like huge racist at the top of the show, and misogynist. Yeah. Like very much like outdated kind of character that, all the people that'll call you an SJW on the internet probably love what Johnny Lawrence is, like genuinely, and don't want to see him change. So I appreciate, but it also gives him somewhere to go over the course of the series, which I really appreciated. And he
starts the show off by assaulting a group of multi-ethnic minors.
Yeah, well, like I don't
for a good reason.
Even that, I don't.
No, not
like,
a good reason.
That is not.
He doesn't like.
He's defending another kid. Like,
not really. That's not what he did it. They threw the kid on top of his car.
So like they attacked him after that. So yeah like he interjected, but he didn't throw the first punch. Kyler throws the first punch in that thing. So he's like at that, like he is Miyagi-Do is karate is only for defense. He is doing that at the top. But yeah, like obviously optics aren't going to work in his favor because he's a 40-something year old guy compared to these kids that are, clearly just being little shitheads. So yeah, things aren't looking great for him. But like I really enjoyed, especially being able to like. This is why I hate kind of like like hopping into TV in the middle of a show, is because I'm like, I get the satisfaction of not having had to wait between seasons like everybody who hopped on at season 1 did. But now that I'm done with season 3, I'm like, but I want, like, I just want more. I want this. I want to be able to enjoy the story start to finish, because I enjoyed it at that pace for the rest of this. But yeah, like, so I like that. Like, I mean, my favorite parts of Cobra Kai are when Johnny and Daniel are getting along. Even if it's begrudgingly, it's when they're realizing that they're like, the stereotype of like, we're more alike than you think kind of thing. And then every single time they rip that out from under me. Like, it's like, hey, they're finally getting, and then like 5 minutes later, they're like, fuck you, because now their kids are rivaling or whatever, and now they have to pick sides, and it's like, damn it, damn it, damn it.
Oh, like in season 1, that was so good. They're like,
Yeah,
hey, let's go, like, oh, let's spar, it'll be great, yada yada. My son is your student.
yeah.
He's your son. Like, that's such a great, like, that's like, there's so many. Season 1 especially is just felt like chock full of these awesome moments.
Mm-hmm.
And then like season 2 is great. I love the like the slow burn character arcs that some of these characters go through. Whether it's
It is a roller
yeah.
coaster in that, because some of them are absolutely like beautiful slow burns, and then some of them are like, we're changing on a dime because shock twist.
Well,
Like,
I think a lot of
they're
people,
all
yeah.
like seated and set up, but it is like the
When
one
it
I'm
triggers, sometimes it can be sudden.
yeah, the one I'm thinking of in particular is Hawk in the final season here. Like, when they're in that big epic fight in the LaRusso house or whatever, and Hawk, which again has been seeded that, he's that Cobra that Kreese is like poisoning Cobra Kai, and the people that Kreese is bringing in are not the people that Hawk wants to be brought in. But the fact that like he changes in the middle of that fight that he came to start, I'm like, hold up, no, there was no turning point for you in the middle of that fight to trigger that that drastic of a. All right, now you're on the good guy's side.
If you look at Hawks, the actual seed is when Miyagi-Do attacks them in the paintball arena. And he has Dimitri's arm, and he's being egged on and told to break it.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that hesitancy. You hear Dimitri begging him not to, and you see in his heart Hawk doesn't want to do this. But you see the others slowly win him over, and to me that's when the seed gets planted.
I mean,
and then every episode after that, leading past that point, in my opinion, is where you see it's just one more thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was seeded even before that, because you have him like rebond with Demetrius at the party briefly over Doctor Who and stuff, which I got a kick out of course.
Yeah.
But like he constantly falls back into, no, I have to be Hawk, I have to be stronger. I can't, like, I look at Demetrius and I don't want to be that. I was that. I don't want to be that. I can't ever go back to being that. And like, even back before that, like the fact that he drove Moon away, like he realizes why why Moon tells him outright, like, this is not the guy I want. I like that you're strong. Like, I like that you are strong, but I'm not like a
gonna
bully.
date a bully.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not dating a bully. I think that for me, the turning, like the actual thing that triggered his turnover is when the same guys who used to call him things like shit lip and whatnot were holding Demetrius's arm in the LaRusso house.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, yo, break this one.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, in that moment, he's basically Kyler. Like, he realizes that he's basically the very bullies that he has hated, and like it's not just what John Kreese has brought in. It's he realizes in that moment it finally hits him if he like what is actually happening, like what he's actually doing. Finally, like that latent impact that Kreese has been keeping away from like that realization from hitting him
Hmm.
by just poisoning him more and more and more with this uber mensch toxic masculinity
Yeah.
is just that at that point it finally hits a threshold that he realizes like he has been regretting breaking Dimitri's arm the entire time, but he's not been able like there has just been
He
I
still
think
has
that
to be
there's
a
a
strong, blah blah blah, whatever.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think that yeah, I think it's done for me it's done well enough, but I also see where the like the cues that I picked up on, I know that a lot of people like overlooked or just saw that as like an overarching thing. Um,
It,
but like at the same time, I see like Tori, like her, like I understand why she's never going to betray Kreese. They make that very clear. Like
yeah.
Kreese is looking out for her,
Yeah.
and nobody's ever looked out for her before. So,
It's
gosh,
it really comes down to the execution of because again, like I think Hawk was seated excellently over the course of years, really, of that storytelling. It's the fact that in the execution, he came to start the fight and then makes the turn like in the middle of the fight. If it had been like a fight broke out that he didn't really want to start, like if there had been like just like a slight hesitancy in that, but like theoretically he's the one that threw little Bert through the window or some shit like that. They show up,
here's the
they
thing.
pretend to be a cat, and then they come in and start the fight, and then
Yeah,
it escalates from there. So again, like if it was the kind of thing that in like a neutral ground area they all kind of like ran into each other and started fighting, and then he saw that and made the twist, made the turn, it wouldn't have been going from 100 to like 100 the other way or something like that. It would have been like, okay, he went from 0 to now he's gonna align with these guys.
yeah.
So that's really what
swings back.
that's really like my hugest sticking point in that. But like
My
throughout,
I would say though that he didn't want like it's important to note. I don't like if I might be recalling incorrectly, but I believe like if I'm recalling correctly, he like it's not like he wanted to go there and do this. Kreese gave the order.
I mean, but he went along for the like he could have sat
Oh
out
yeah,
or
no, he
like whatever the case. Like he
could he like I don't
he
like I
came
like
he came to show up and start the fight.
he did
He could
because he
like
was told to.
if he was and yeah, he could like he wouldn't have had that trigger point of seeing Demetrius in the broken arm to like give them a heads up warning or something like that. But it's still like that's where it just really comes down to the execution of like
In that scene.
in
Yeah, I
in
agree.
that moment. And that is the most glaring one because he's been on the dark side for so long. It's like it's Kylo Ren suddenly becoming like a good guy, even though sure the seeds were planted. It just doesn't in execution it doesn't work for me as well as it could have, I think. But
I
there
agree.
there
I
are
think
like
it definitely could have been better.
it feels like there are a ton of those like eh, but at the same time I want to kind of like roll it back and say I still buy it all because one of
Yeah.
the things this show executes on almost perfectly is that notion that when we're in high school, everything is the most important thing ever. I mean, like even going back to Karate Kid, like the films, like
Yeah.
these and that's where like Daniel, especially Daniel's wife, really kind of Amanda gets to really comment on it the most in all of her kind of like just like constantly giving them crap on the Daniel and Johnny rivalry and all that stuff is like of course it was the most important thing. You were in high school. That's how it always is. And yet then they fail to see that in their own kids, and how they're going through the same kind of stuff right now in that yes, these are like the most important relationships that these kids have ever had and think they will ever have because we're all stupid when we're that age and that's what we all
Yeah.
think. And these are the most important rivalries and Daniel is basically just like re-experiencing that bully and taking that. So like all of that is almost like coming to fruition, really. And it is like, clearly this rivalry with Johnny is the biggest rivalry in my life because it has lasted this whole test of time, and has resurfaced all these years later and stuff. So I think the show especially, but even the movies, really does do a great job of kind of like honing in on that kind of vibe of these characters in a lot of great ways. It's just like a ton of fun, and you do kind of see like, you know, the relationship switching on a dime, from like Miguel and Sam to Sam and Robbie and all that stuff. Robbie,
But that's so high school.
Exactly.
That's so high school, though.
Yep, exactly.
I think the only thing is, a lot of people complained about Robbie's shift in season 3. But the only thing I would note to that is, when you have done something like what Robbie did at the end of season 2, that and then his experience for the several weeks after that, that event is incredibly traumatic. And because of the plot, he has not gotten the support that he really needed. And because of that, he is now in a place where John Kreese can like
exploit that vulnerability.
Oh yeah, because John Kreese, this is what John Kreese does. He finds vulnerable young men and he turns them into
his soldiers.
His soldiers, yeah. He that's what he does. He did it with Johnny, and when he tells his friends that he brought back Cobra Kai, and they all just give him like the shittiest look. And they're like, how could you bring this back? It almost ruined our lives. And like to hear grown men say, the karate dojo I was back in high school almost ruined my life. But this also speaks to, oh, by the way, how do you enjoy that meta joke of, I've never understood the fascination with the people of the valley and karate.
I thought it was great.
Like Amanda says that season 1, and then in season 3, the chairman of
the council person or whatever.
The council person. Yeah, she goes, I for one have never understood. Like, they make this plea about karate, and every other council person just like nods their head and says, I get it. And she just goes, like, I understand I'm going to be outvoted, but I, for one, have never understood the fascination the Valley has with karate. And it's just like,
I mean, there are so many of those meta jokes and stuff. Like, one of the ones that really, like, jumped out at me was the callback to the first movie at the end of the first season where the announcer guy is like, Daniel LaRusso's going to coach? Daniel LaRusso's going to coach! And everyone loses their mind at this. And it's like, none of you care that much about this announcement, really.
But they do, because you see the karate moms.
Exactly, that's very true,
There is something, I love the fact that they've built this world where they're like in this one spot in California. There is nothing more important to the spirit and heart of the minds and people of the Valley as karate taught in strip malls.
It's what football is to Friday Night Lights in Texas.
Yep, it is so like I love that this is like they've set this up of like Texas has football.
I mean, like
the Valley has karate.
It would be like here if like Chapman Earnhardt or something like that was just like I was a karate champ back in the 80s for 2 years, so I'm gonna kick the competition. It's like, that's what like constitutes a local celebrity. Okay, sure, whatever.
In LA, where there are real celebrities.
Yeah, exactly.
So good. It's so good.
It's Wahlburgers.
It is Wahlburgers,
So like I love those elements of the show especially, and again, that's I contemplated watching Cobra Kai without ever hopping into Karate Kid, because I feel like I would have, and I still think to some degree I would have gotten the show and I would have understood it enough, especially given the show's gregarious use of flashbacks and just like pulling in lessons from the movies and footage from the movies. But I definitely wouldn't have appreciated small little things like that. I would not have gotten the announcer line there being a callback to the announcer from the first movie kind of stuff. So like I'm glad I sat down and watched them. I wouldn't have gotten the impact necessarily of Daniel going to Japan, running into is it Kimiko? Yukio, yeah, whoever, like her and Chosen, and then the girl that he saved that ends up saving his business.
Oh my gosh, I love that entire thing
in a
was great.
pure little kismet kind of thing. Yeah, like that was great.
Can I buy you a drink? I hope so. I'm about to save your business.
Yeah, exactly.
So good.
Like this girl that didn't even have a name in the movie is now this, a crucial, important person to Daniel's life.
Oh, but I loved. Oh man, I loved their joke about globalization, especially in places like Japan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where
where they go to Tomy Village and it's just
yeah.
like a strip mall filled with, like, we used to have a Subway, but now we have a Jersey Mike's.
There's Mike's. So good. But I love Chosen. Like I was really like Chosen's introduction in season 3. I was like really wary of because I'm like I'm just like not feeling this, and then eventually I eased into it, and I'm like, well, this is what it is. Let's just see where it goes. And then for it to turn out that he was putting on an act the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
That he was like yeah, no, I almost committed suicide.
Yeah.
But my uncle reached out, like, because at the end of the second film, his uncle wants nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
And then it turns out, no, his uncle did reach out to him, save his life, and now he himself he is now a teacher of Miyagi-Do.
And the fact that, like, in the world that even all makes sense because Sato had lived so much of his life holding a grudge and realized, like, hey, I need to grab this kid and save him because that's not the way this works. Yes, I fueled that fire by disowning him and saying he's dead to me or whatever, just 24 hours ago or whatnot. But like the fact that, like, in canon, it makes sense that he would reach out and say, like, hey, don't hold a grudge. Like, this family knows things about holding grudges and it's not healthy.
Also, how good was that nose honk?
Yeah, that was a great little bit too. Yeah, like the callback, and like I knew it was coming. As soon as, like, he's in the death pose, I was like, well, this is clearly going to end with him honking the nose, and it didn't disappoint. So I don't fault it for that, because it is a good callback. Just like I thought it was a good callback in the movie where it's like, of course he's gonna do what Miyagi had done to Kreese at the beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah,
gosh, no, they're like, that's so good.
And then Allie coming back too was a great. That was a great. I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but like my favorite episode of the series might have been when Johnny goes out with the old Cobra Kai gang, and especially like I had been looking at, like, some of the IMDb stuff going into watching it, so I knew that the actor actually passed away a couple months afterwards or something like that. So I knew
he actually was sick. It wasn't makeup.
Yeah.
I was like, man, they're making this cancer makeup look super good.
Yeah. So,
and then if I like the season 1 premiere or season 3 premiere, they're like, oh no, he actually died. And it's like,
yeah. So that
cool.
that extra bit of meta-ness even there, like, helped fuel the emotion. But even aside from that, like, I thought it was a beautiful, like, way, and the only weirdly possible way they could have, like, made a reference back to the "put him in a body bag" line is by putting him in an actual body bag. That was just a beautiful scene, and I thought a really great turning point for Johnny, and like, really instilled in him again, because it's proving that he wasn't alone in thinking Cobra Kai, like, ruined his life and John Kreese ruined his life. Like, seeing it from his friends and seeing their reaction to that, and that he has to, like, really stand by his whole thing to try and make Cobra Kai better. Like, I think that fuels his fire, and the fact that it is, tied to the actual real life sickness and passing of one of those characters, one of those performers, I thought was, a beautiful little touch. But gosh, then Allie coming back was another just standout. Oh yeah,
that
you have the most important thing, time. Yeah.
you have the most important thing that you can have, time.
Yeah.
And that's when he makes a realization. I need to like reach out to Robbie. I need to like he that like that trip really puts his life in perspective.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, in trying to get his life on like really getting it on track, he took his eye off Kreese, and that's all Kreese needed.
I mean, yeah, like him leaving the
Cobra.
dojo to go and do that trip, and Kreese like immediately sees that opportunity. Like when he comes back, Kreese has moved into his office and he's all set and ready to go. And clearly, we find out that he's kind of like gone behind his back and kind of taken over the deal and all that stuff. Yeah, it's like John Kreese is a dick. And the tease for Terry Silver, like I'm very curious
Oh,
if that actor is going to come back and reprise that role, because like
because he's retired. Yeah.
yeah, like he's just even more like John Kreese has become the over the top villain that he was in the series, but like he also just took so much like gleeful joy to it, and so like season 4 now does give me the prospect of like giving me that denouement that I wanted from the end of the third film of like, did he like, has he just been continuing to like succeed in the world of toxic waste? Is he one of those, Exxon executives where it's like, fuck that guy because of the harm he has done for this planet and the billions of dollars he has made from that? Because in the real world, they don't deal with those consequences. They don't have to suffer those consequences. So yeah, Terry Silver's probably been kicking ass in the world because this little like All Valley tournament setback from 30 years ago didn't do a shit to his world. It was just like a blip of pride, and then okay, whatever. I'm just gonna go back to my mansion and
Well,
billions of
he
dollars.
he did though because he offered John Kreese a job. That was the whole.
Hmm.
He's like, my friend even offered me a job,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
something that is referenced in Karate Kid Part 3, but it's also carried over. Like John Kreese did turn like John Kreese is a monster.
hmm,
However, like if there's one thing Silver has, it's that he has loyalty to John.
hmm.
Like that's his redeeming quality. That's it. And his redeeming quality is loyalty to a sociopath.
Yeah.
So
So not really all that redeeming.
it's not that redeeming at
Just
all.
another shitty quality that he has.
Yeah, just because I love it because like they promised that guy 50% of Karate Dojo like royalties,
Hmm.
and it's like John Kreese doesn't even or not John Kreese, Tony Silver doesn't even make his money from that.
Yeah,
That's like his side thing that he does. That's his hobby.
yeah,
He does karate as a hobby, and then in the real world he takes those Cobra Kai principles and applies them to business, which means he's a terrible human being and probably deserves to have like died.
yeah. But he probably hasn't. He's probably coming back for season 4,
Yep,
and
he's
that's
probably
gonna
coming
be
back. Oh man,
weird.
I
Because
think
yeah,
they're gonna
like
bring back the brute that they hired in part 3.
I don't know. Like I wouldn't be surprised really if like they get back. Yeah, what Snake and Dennis, I think were were the two guys' names.
Snake and Dennis.
Like yeah, they'll probably all come and what Mike Jones or not Mike Jones.
Yeah,
Like
Mike.
whoever it is, the bad boy of karate or whatever. Like they'll probably all come back. And yeah, maybe they're all well. I don't know. Since he did fail him, maybe he gotten written off or something. So maybe that guy will come in and be another Johnny Lawrence type of character, where it's like he's seen what what a shitty life karate led for him, and so now he's created a also trying to redeem himself dojo. But yeah, the final shots of season 3 of Johnny and Daniel kind of like combining their dojos. I'm like, yes. Now, how quickly is season 4 going to ruin this for me? Because that's what they've done every other time these guys become like frenemies. Because like again, some of the standout scenes are the two of them at the bar in that first season, while they're getting Johnny his new car. It is like the double date they go on at the Mexican restaurant where they like
That's such a good episode.
they like their significant others kind of help them realize how similar they are, and then Obviously, like the
But
whole
also frame their rivalry as a high school thing
yeah,
that is in the past.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then again, the Allie episode where she comes back and kind of
Oh gosh.
like has her stuff with him. Then they all get together. And that was another like I love the callback of like as soon as I saw the they cut into the kitchen and it's like pouring spaghetti sauce on like on spaghetti. I was like, okay, that's either gonna end up on somebody or they're gonna like make a reference to it potentially. And so I immediately love that Johnny's like, I'm wearing white, dude. I don't want that showing up all like I don't want that like all over me. Watch where you're going, kind of thing. That was a great little callback.
Yep.
But yeah, like
Oh gosh.
it was great because where Johnny and Carmen's relationship was at that point, like when Allie comes back into the picture, and especially like they kind of give you the tease that she's now single and separate or whatever. It's like, no, don't fall back into this. Please don't. You have such a good thing potentially going with Carmen there. Don't go back to being old Johnny. And I love that he doesn't, and that Allie doesn't let him. And they are gonna, hopefully
They
all
both make that
grow
decision.
and be better for
Yeah.
this. Yeah, it is like
It's not like she doesn't. It's not that she doesn't let it. It's like that same moment they realize that while this was like a fun day to kind of like relive the past, they both recognize at that same moment this was a fun thing to do with a friend, and like they'll now be. And the nice thing about it is like Allie will now be like she's gotten back in contact with Daniel. She's gotten back in contact with Johnny. These are like core friendships that she'll have going forward, but she's also going through her own thing with her divorce, and they make that like this was a wonderful reprieve for her, and it's a wonderful reprieve for him, but they both have to go their separate ways to deal with real life.
yeah.
And real life comes a knocking when he goes to tell Carmen that he loves her, and when she opens the door, she's crying. He's like, "What's wrong?" They open the door, and there's Miguel just like beat up,
Bloodied and beat to hell.
bloodied
Yeah.
up, bloodied to beat to hell. Because like Miguel, I love the return of nerdy Miguel in season 3. Like he's finally like they're finally balancing this like aggressive, dominant karate fighter with this total dork.
Yeah. The charming guy that like won Sam over. Like I was so sad to see like Cobra Kai like turn him in season 1 and then throughout season 2. So yeah, when he finally like him turning back at the end of season 2 and showing mercy, and then obviously the fallout from that was rough.
So good. Oh my gosh.
but
That
yeah,
fight was
yeah.
Let's talk about the fights now. I want to talk about the fights.
Yeah, I mean the fights are great, as absurd and over the top as they are.
So good. Oh man, when that one kid takes the book and hits his friend with it. Oh, so good. No, I have never been disappointed with any of the major season end fights. Whether it's the All Valley Karate Tournament in season 1, I just thought was excellent. I love seeing it from beginning to end. Oh my gosh, the Taekwondo kid who gives that speech, and it's clearly like this like super vain, glorious speech that he's giving.
And you just know like exactly what Johnny's gonna say when he's done. It's like kick that pussy's ass.
Yeah, he just does it. I think season 2 does have the best end fight scene because it's like the house party brawl in season 3 is good, but the nonstop kind of insanity of season 2's like school brawl is just so good. Whether it's Hawk hunting Dimitri through the computer lab and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like the shining point of the season 2 fight is it's all of the rivalries that have been set up and seeded throughout the whole season. Everybody has their enemy to fight in that. So you have Sam and Tori, you have the tiny nerds, Bert and whoever. You have ass face and shit breath or whatever. you have everybody that has like picked a side now coming together and battling it out. You have Stingray showing up and just fucking up.
Oh my gosh,
fucking up the non Cobra Kai kids. Then
What's hilarious? It's like he's a like they make fun of it in season 3. They're like, why was that grown man assaulting children on campus?
Yeah.
What was up with that security guard?
He wasn't a security guard. He was interviewing for a position, but he was not. He was not one of our staff. Like even the fact that the teachers kind of like somebody's like, are you guys gonna do anything? And like one teacher goes in and just gets like judo flipped and thrown, and the other guy's like, we don't get paid nearly enough to deal with this, so no, I'm out. Fuck this.
Also, fun fact: it is illegal for a teacher to get in the middle of a fight between two students.
Yeah.
It is a massive, like, as a former substitute teacher, that teacher who interfered actually broke the law and was probably fired for it.
Yeah.
Or at least put on probation.
Because Cobra Kai really cares about the consequences of that kind of stuff and the law.
I know. I mean, it was a karate brawl in the All Valley. You know, things are going to get swept under the rug. Like, it just happens. People were like, what happened? It was a karate brawl? Understandable.
Yeah.
Like, was it a big deal for some of the parents?
What can only be described as karate gang warfare.
Gang warfare. So good. No, when one of my favorite parts is when Tori gets on the speaker and says, I'm coming for you, bitch.
Yeah.
And Miguel and Robbie's faces in their different classes going like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
And them just like Miguel especially, like, Shiloh is such a good actor in that, like, he's like, oh, because what's interesting is, like, when Sam breaks up with him at the end of season 1, he does go on the asshole binge, and then he starts going back to kind of old Miguel. He's doing that Photoshop thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tori's the one that takes him out of it. Yeah. And it's like Tori is this, like, very, like, toxic, like, she herself is not a necessarily quote unquote bad person in season 2, so much as she reinforces the toxic behaviors that Kreese wants Miguel to start picking up.
Mm-hmm.
And he embraces those, and then when he starts realizing, because once again he starts talking to Sam, like the whole drink off that they're doing, the binge thing, and then when he kind of realizes that there's something very complicated going on between him, Tori, and Sam, and a karate fight is not the way to deal with it.
Yeah.
And once again, like, so good, but also just the confusion. Like, Robbie got there first. He sees Robbie, like, manhandling Tori, and just has that macho, like that macho kind of freak out of like, hey, you touching my girl, and like then that's and it really is like their toxic rivalry as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of like the moment they see each other, it goes off. Gosh. No, yeah. I love the show so much. The arcs that characters go on. Johnny's like very slow burn growth throughout season 1,
mm-hmm.
and going into season 2, and kind of like the elevation of that storytelling, down to the point where it's like, but is he still Johnny Lawrence? It's like, yes, he is, because he named his karate dojo Eagle Fang.
Yeah, Eagle Fang, yeah.
Eagle Fang Karate.
I remember seeing, like, a couple days before the new year, some tweet going around that was basically like, we put so much into, like, this new piece of merch that's going to be ready to go for people on day 1 or whatever. Like, and I'm so excited about it. I think it was somebody involved with the show or something like that. And I remember watching season 3 again in the last week. So I was like, I wonder what that thing was. And then like the Eagle Fang shirts come up. I was like, oh, that's clearly what it is. It's clearly, I'm sure they're selling a shit ton of Eagle Fang shirts.
Of course they are. Are you kidding? That shirt's awesome. That shirt is so rad. It's dumb as hell.
Eagles don't have fangs. Shut up.
Fangs. Shut up.
Yeah.
Like it's so absurdly dumb, but at the same time, like, nothing screams more Johnny Lawrence than, like, he even says, like, his favorite film is Iron Eagle.
Yeah.
Iron Eagle's a terrible film.
Mm-hmm.
That movie's terrible. It's horrible. But man, oh man, is it just like, it is, like, the cheese is so perfectly cooked
mm-hmm.
in this game, or in this film, or show rather.
Yeah.
like the cheese is so like the cheese could sometimes be overdone or undercooked in the films to like especially in 3 to like such varying degrees. But they just know exactly how to just keep the absolute goofiness and the cheesiness of the world that they've built just smooth throughout it. And man, I'm so happy that you watched it.
Yeah.
That you watched all the films too. It's like I've always been such a like I love the Karate Kid films. It's interesting because like part 3 is my least favorite because um it's so dumb.
Mm-hmm.
One is my favorite, but 2 has a special spot in my heart because I originally watched like the first time I sat down to watch Karate Kid 1 for like the first time, I watched all the way through Karate Kid 1, but it was a double feature on AMC.
Mm-hmm.
And right at the end during the freeze frame that you're talking about, how it ends abruptly,
Mm-hmm.
because part 2 starts right after that.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize I was watching part 2.
You just thought part 1 was really, really long.
That is correct.
Even
I remember
even though
hearing people talk about it being like really long, and I'm like, okay.
So part 2, which starts with like a 5-minute recap of part 1, you just watched all of that going into it and then going into the new stuff, or for that double feature, did they like chop off that little bit and then it just goes straight into the new stuff?
I thought it was like they were coming back from commercial break, and so they wanted like they did the recap.
Okay.
I'm
mean,
like, because AMC does that sometimes.
Sure.
But,
I don't think they do, but okay.
I mean, I don't know. I was like, it was like a Thursday afternoon in like the dead middle of summer when nothing was going on.
You probably hadn't slept in 24 hours.
No, I had slept plenty back then.
Okay.
I was like 14. I used to sleep all the time back then. God, I miss that.
Okay. But yeah, like that was another thing. Like watching the movies, I was just like, okay, so I could just have skipped like the first 5 minutes of both of these movies, which both have seemingly like longer run times than they need, because I was watching everything back to back to back. I didn't need the like, well, what happened in the first movie that's going to be important for this movie, and what happened in the first movie again that's going to be important for the third movie. Cobra Kai.
Did you cry? Did you cry when Yukiko read Miyagi's letter, like last letter?
I don't know if I cried, but I definitely like I thought it was a beautiful, especially like when Miyagi makes the turn into talking about Daniel and Daniel as his son kind of thing. I thought it was beautiful. I don't know if I cried about it, but
when he says like when he talks about Sam being like his granddaughter, that's when it hit me, because Miyagi's story, like his personal story, is such a hard, tragic story that came to a culmination of good at the very end of his life. But he went through a lot of hardship and a lot of tragedy to get there. And for Daniel to be not just his student, but like a son to him, especially since we find out because Daniel's own father had died when Daniel was young. So like they found each other in such a way. And it's interesting to see the parallels of Kreese and Johnny.
Yeah.
Johnny's actual father was a deadbeat and didn't want to have anything to do with him. His stepfather was a monster, like an absolute bully, constantly verbally abusive to him as a kid. And like
Ed Asner, weird pull for that, but okay. Yeah,
weird pull for that, but he's great.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Johnny paying for Miguel's surgery with the stolen statue from his house.
Yeah.
I forgot about that until just now. I'm like, he stole a statue to pay for Miguel's surgery.
Yeah. I back when we were talking about like character turning points and stuff, I like another reason that I think I feel Hawk needs to do like way more to redeem himself is because he also was the asshole that stole Miyagi's Medal of Honor. And then Miguel starting to make his way back to the light was him returning it once he figured out, like once he learned that it was or once he took it back from Hawk. Was great. Even that whole the whole like capture the flag sequence that they had perfectly capped off with the Stingray like bit at the end.
Like, what is Stingray doing here? Stingray, like, up to that point, I was like, I hate this character. I hate him. I don't like him being there.
I liked him, and a lot of it probably comes from like I like that actor a lot. And admittedly, I've only seen the actor in a couple things, most notably I, Tonya. And he's
great.
He's hilarious in I, Tonya, and he's again hilarious in this, in my impression. And like he is, the deadbeat 30-something guy that is looking for something in his life, and so he finds Cobra Kai, and the fact that like Johnny accepts him being the misfit, and then he immediately gets corrupted by Kreese and just like turns into like he does the exact same beats as Hawk of he's like, you have to do something to set you apart, and he's like, I did this, I'm Stingray or whatever, and it's just like, okay, whatever, you're intentionally supposed to be an idiot, so fine, I love it.
When he shows up to the party with his girlfriend, and she's like, I thought you said we were going to hang out with your friends. These are my friends.
Yeah,
they're high school kids. Yeah, I'm in a karate class.
Yeah. It was
so good.
Like I really enjoyed that character like all throughout. Even his like introduction at the hardware store or whatever.
I liked his introduction at the hardware store. Him showing up to these classes with children kind of weirded me out.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, when he did the Stingray popping up out of the leaves thing, I was like, okay, I'm on board. Like I was off, but you got me. Like this sold me. This is who this character is. This is what he's going to be. And then the very season finale, he comes out of there, and the principal's just like, "What's going on? What should we do?" And he goes, "Don't worry, I've got this."
Yeah.
And he starts beating up children. Hawk sees him. They like high five and fist bump.
Yeah.
And then he keeps going and beating up small children.
Yeah.
Like this, it's supposed to be like they have the music to it. It's like this triumphant moment for this character. But he's a grown man assaulting children in their school.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, that's another thing that the show is excellent at, is subverting those kinds of things. Like, we're cheering the things we know we shouldn't be cheering. Like, from a mental perspective, like, we know at the end of season 1, Cobra Kai's still, the bad guy. Like, Johnny brought it back, and no mercy isn't the way to go. So, and clearly Miguel has turned to the dark side, so we don't want to cheer Miguel winning, but we kind of do still when he does win. Like
because he's our hero. He's been going through this process.
He was our protector. It would be like if by the end of A New Hope, Luke actually kind of turns into a bad guy.
Gosh, it's great. So good.
And the rivalry between Miguel and Robbie is great. Robbie, I started to say it earlier. Like from the first like moments I saw Robbie, I was like, wow, it's a new Sean Hunter for the 2020s. Like,
right?
It is absurd how much he looks like Boy Meets World Sean Hunter kind of stuff.
He looks like he could have been an extra on Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
The butt haircut 100% sells it.
I mean, if you had told me, since I haven't watched Girl Meets World, if you had told me that Sean Hunter, comes in for an episode and brings his kid, and that kid played his kid and is like, running around with Corey and Topanga's kids, I would have been like, yeah, no, I totally would buy that. Yeah, because he's just a spitting image kind of thing. But yeah, so much good stuff in Cobra Kai. I'm really glad I sat down and watched it. Again, like I feel like I probably don't ever really need to go back and like watch the movies again, but like the show is fun and I have a great time with it. On a especially bingeable basis kind of thing. It was just, I'm just gonna stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning watching half a season or something like that and just having a great time. Enjoying little callbacks, little references. I am excited to see where they go for season 4. I hope the writers are able to find a way to bring like Aisha back in, because I really liked her as a character and I thought she was missing in season 3. I mean, she obviously was missing in season 3 and was written out of season 3. So I hope they figure a way to bring her back, just like they brought back like Kyler and them in some capacity. Like maybe she has still been doing karate and she shows up at the All Valley tournament.
All Valley? That'd be sick if she shows up and like just starts wrecking house.
Yeah.
they like I think there was like her not being in season 3, from what I understand, has been like multifaceted.
Yeah, like
There's
I
not
mean,
there's not like one reason for it, which
y-
is good to hear, because when people are like, well, there's this one reason and it doesn't sound like a good reason, that's a problem. But when they say, well, these are like these 6 reasons she didn't come back, and now that they've closed off a lot of like plot points that got uh, brought up in season 2, season 3 kind of closed on a lot of those, we can start seeing a return to season 3 was heavily solved, like dealing with the adults,
mhm.
and now that the adults have kind of just like they've dealt with stuff, now we can, I think, start focusing more again on the kids, and that would be a great reason to bring Aisha back, especially if like her parents heard that like this would be cool is if her parents heard that um, Johnny opened up a new dojo because Cobra Kai is too violent and was like taken over by a psychopath, because her parents like did like that Cobra Kai had like brought out the athlete in her.
Mhm.
And so
What I
yeah,
would
I
like,
would love to see that.
what I would like to see in season 4 on that arc would be Daniel and Johnny going to her parents together, like showing up and saying like, "Hey, we know, like, we completely understand why you like you moved schools and you kind of took her out of this environment. Like, it was not great, and it's still not great. But here's what we're trying to do. Here's how we're going to try and be better. Like, we've settled our beef. Cobra Kai is still out there, and they're still dangerous because this madman took over and became a psychopath. But we would love
And
to
he's
have
backed by a
her,
toxic waste
like,
billionaire.
yeah, but like, she and Sam were best friends growing up. We would love to, be able to reinstate that kind of relationship and all that stuff. So like that's I think story wise, if I think there's an easy way to write her back into the show
Yeah,
doing something like that. It's just a matter of don't write her back in and then don't give her anything to do for the year. That
agreed.
that would be unfortunate. And I think that's
She was just
like
such a great character.
yeah, my understanding was like, yeah, they had so many other storylines that they just couldn't really find a spot to squeeze her in, so they kind of wrote her out of the season. But again, like, Yaz was completely gone, in Paris for the summer or whatever during season 2, and she's back. So
Yeah,
and Kyler and his like little band of hooligans were out and they're back.
we're
So
gone.
so yeah, I definitely think this show has shown like it will absolutely have people come and go as appropriate. So I hope that we get to see her back because yeah, she was a presence that I felt that I missed in season 3 there.
From
And
what I've understood from like kind of like social media and stuff, the Cobra Kai like crew is still really close.
mhm.
So like she is like I really hope she comes back. I think that she was an excellent character. I think that if you like look at what like she has done, like there, I was looking like the first thing I found when I looked her up, because I was like, what happened to her, was what happened to her articles, which are always nonsense.
Mhm.
So you skip those, but the rest of the stuff I saw was like fitness and health stuff, and she looks phenomenal. Like she just looks awesome as hell, and I would love to see her come and make like this kick-ass comeback to Cobra Kai, because her character was a badass, and I loved her character from the moment she tackled Miguel to she knocked out some like she just knocked out some girl, or no, some guy, like some dude just like attacked her in the school hallway, and she's like, "What? No, you don't," and just started whooping ass.
Mhm.
Like I love that. I loved her character. Love the actress. I would really love to see her back.
Do you think Anthony LaRusso, little shit braid, little shit head that like loves his PS Vita, do you think in season 4 he comes back and goes to Cobra Kai?
No,
I do.
no,
I
he's just the shithead brother like character. That's
I
all he is.
I think he rebels against his parents and joins Cobra Kai like on this down low, and just to kind of like piss off the family a little bit because he's a little.
I don't think.
That he's a shithead. He is a shithead,
No,
and that is the most
he's a
shithead thing he can do.
no, he's a shithead to his sister. he is a kiss ass to his parents.
No,
Not to his dad.
He is a fake kiss ass to his parents, and his parents see
That's
through
accurate.
it, and they call
That's
him on his
accurate.
shit. So
Yeah, but like he's not
he could
significant
still
enough to
keep
like.
doing that.
Here's the thing: I don't want them to waste screen time.
That's fair.
On Anthony LaRusso.
That's fair.
Anthony LaRusso showing up with Amanda to be a little shithead to
the fact
Sam,
that he was only in one
enough.
scene in season 3 kind of is like, maybe they don't really care about him either.
Did that kid get a glow up because he grew like 2 feet? Yeah, sure. But like he was a little fat shithead in season 1. Then he went to fat camp in season 2, and now he's back as a little I love the character's existence because it is the perfect foil to your female teenage hero or your heroine or just hero. Like to deal with a shitbag little brother who is not on your side and is not on your side because he is your little brother and he wants to piss you off because that's what he does. Like as a former little brother who specialized in pissing off his older siblings, I can tell you that instinct is real. It is a muscle, not a choice, and you can choose to use that muscle whenever you want. And it is hard to stop using that muscle.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm starting to think about season 4 again, and I'm like, I do not look forward to Robbie learning the Quicksilver method of how to fuck up your opponents. Because I guarantee that's going to come back too, and they're probably going to set up like that, the wood body, and they're going to put Miguel's face on it, and the whole thing's clearly going to be building to All Valley 51. So, but it's going to be fun.
Isn't that awesome? Isn't it so good? I love it. I love it so much.
It is so dumb.
When I realized we were like 3 episodes away from ending the season, and the All Valley tournament was still like months away.
Yeah.
It
had just been like reinstated or whatever. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. Oh, and the worst part is we have to wait forever because COVID set everything back.
We do. But at the same time, like, at least we already know they've committed to it. So we already know season 4 is coming. As opposed to like, oh, it might. And admittedly, season 4's not all that common in a Netflix world. So, shout out to that.
That's true. Well, to be fair,
this is only the second
season
of Netflix.
Yeah, it's only the second season of Netflix. Yeah. No, and also, can we talk about that Netflix glow up they got for season 3?
I mean, I know people...
real licensed music, rather than as much as I love Johnny riding with the boys on the motorcycle, hearing a song about Johnny's riding with the boys on the motorcycles was good, fine, passive, totally okay, but not season 3 had Thunderstruck and Phil Collins and all sorts of stuff. Great stuff was actually in season 3 song wise.
Yeah, it was interesting because season 1 obviously coming into it all in one flurry like I did just now. People had talked about it going from a YouTube show to a Netflix show, and I honestly I don't pay that much attention to film production stuff, so I really didn't notice it that much. But yeah, sure, they clearly they had the money to go to Japan and film stuff there, and some of that music stuff. But even I feel like they did I thought a good enough job sprinkling in some of the iconic songs from the series in seasons 1 and 2 that I remember those, and then I kind of remember when an 80s sound-alike song would come on, thinking this, I remember thinking this sounds like 80s, and then I'd listen to the lyrics and be like, is this something they wrote just for this series? that is speaking to this particular moment? Okay, interesting choice. But it never, it was always it happened and it was done and I stopped thinking about it. So I'm sure that glow up is there. The first 2 seasons looked and sounded fine to me though, as a...
Oh yeah, totally.
So it didn't jump out at me as oh yeah, they clearly had Netflix money for this.
For me, it was the music, because music, like outside of those like classic songs they were bringing back,
Mm-hmm.
season 2 at the very end had a really awesome cover of "Cruel Summer." And then season 3, like they started off, and all of a sudden they're listening to like really good music, and it's awesome. But like one of my favorite moments, and I would be remiss if we didn't talk about it, when Daniel and Johnny team up to find Robbie,
Mm-hmm.
and Johnny is just drunk in the passenger side seat,
Mm-hmm.
as the, like he's just stinking drunk, and just like when Amanda calls and she says like she calls him by Miami Vice, and he just outright just corrects her. He goes, "They were narcotics detectives.
Yeah.
We're more like Tango and Cash."
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, and
I also have loved
Daniel just looking over at him, just like, we are like just thinking we are not.
yeah. The recurring gag of Johnny just being completely technologically illiterate has been also a delight.
Taken to the nth degree this season.
Yeah.
So good when they
he
say
goes back to the pawn
how do we
shop
reach
or
you?
whatever, and it didn't work. He's like,
it stopped working.
It stopped working. Did you try plugging it in? And then he does, and he's like, oh well, I'll be damned. And him like leaning
things,
over and like talking into the steering wheel in the car.
Yes. I loved when he, at the beginning of season 3, when they're like, "We tried reaching you. You can't reach me. I threw my phone away forever."
Yeah.
He threw it at the beach. He's just like, "I threw it away forever."
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't have a phone after that.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how to call him or contact him.
Yeah.
And it causes very real issues for him.
Mm-hmm.
In the season that could have easily been avoided if he had a cell phone, but he threw his cell phone away forever.
Yeah, which, I mean, admittedly, great storytelling device there, because yeah, when everybody is immediately accessible, like it makes it that much less viable that you're that like, oh, I couldn't get a hold of you or whatever. He doesn't have his phone, so okay, yep, and he's an idiot, so yep. I also loved his Facebook escapades with Miguel. Yes. Both like his novel all in caps that we got to see, as well as him writing the better condensed version, and then still being like, nah, that's too long, and then just not much you.
So good.
And then
good.
And of course all of his pretentious like photos of trying to be not who he is at all. We're all.
He
great,
stabs the sushi to eat it.
Yeah.
And then afterwards he's like,
yeah.
Like, oh, that's disgusting. I hate it. It's eel.
Yeah.
Gross. And it's like Johnny Lawrence is such a child.
Yeah. A lot of great stuff there. So.
Oh my gosh.
Cobra Kai, just a ton of fun. I can't wait to when season 4 comes out. Gonna be another fun watch there. So. I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to sit down and talk about this. I know when we kind of were originally like, when I put out the call yesterday, like, hey, anybody want to be on the show? You were like, I haven't really done anything. And so I was like, well, I sat down and watched all of Karate Kid. You want to talk about that with me? And you were like, absolutely, I do. So boom, there we go. Knocked out an hour and 45-minute episode for it. So
there you go.
Great sitting down. And it's it's fun just getting to sit down and chat with a friend about this series, having just come to it myself. So let us go around the metaphorical tape with any plugs we have. You can follow Cameron at RevCabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Cam?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to give a shout out. This might be a little bit out in the open, but I want to give a massive shout out to the Kind of Funny Xcast. I know it's part of like a larger company, so it's weird that we're shouting them out, but
Perfect.
I want to shout out this podcast in particular because 2 weeks in a row, absolute banger episodes. Paris is a phenomenal co-host to be added to just the hype machine that is Gary Whitta and Mike Howard. Paris is he's such an awesome addition. Really great too, because he has, like, anybody who's ever heard that man talk knows he has just like a very, like, the tone of his voice is just perfect because it sits above Gary and below Mike. And so it's just like, it's this perfect layer of just like when they get excited about something or they're pumped to talk about something, They're always able to bring the energy. Gary, of course, just like cracking jokes like nobody's business. He's great at it. And Mike proving that, like, really proving that he's such a great host. I want to bring it up because there was that lull where they weren't doing new episodes because they hadn't brought the series back as a permanent mainstay after its pilot program. But I want to give a massive shout out. One, because I love Snow Bicycle Michael so much. And just like, I like, it's a Saturday podcast. It's for a segment of an audience that isn't really largely part of the Kind of Funny audience as a core, which is mostly a PlayStation audience. And I just, I want to give a shout out to what has been some really good podcasts. So,
Yeah. No, they're doing great work over there, and I concur that Paris was a great addition, and not just because I'd predicted it back on this show like a few weeks ago. Yeah, he was a great addition, and I love that. Yeah, he brings in a great comparable energy to or compatible energy to Mike and Gary there. So I concur with your shout out there. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and I will give a follow up shout out to all of our Game of the Year content, which is up and online now. Not only obviously our epic 5-hour show last week, which if you can't deal with 5 hours, I get it. I threw the timestamps in there so you can like listen to like a number or two at a time if that's a much more digestible manner. But if you don't even want to do that, all of our written top 10s are up on the site now, as well as kind of the overall site top 10. So you can check all of that in written form up on thatnerdysite.com. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or check out thatnerdysite.com for all of the latest, including any follow-up additional content we're doing here throughout the rest of the month. If you liked what you heard, please, once again, rate, review, like, subscribe, maybe even consider supporting us over on Patreon, patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this show. This month's early access episode is Logan and I kind of reflecting back on That Nerdy Site's 2020, as well as some of our kind of goals ahead here for 2021. So you can check that out. It's coming up at that point where I need to start thinking about and coordinating with you guys to do our January episode. So yay for that. But yeah, that's going to do it. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.